Hello class, and welcome to Notes 5.3, Solving Equations Using Addition or Subtraction. California Standards AF 1.1 and AF 1.4. We have a lot of vocabulary today, so make sure you do pause the video and write it all down. Equation is a mathematical sentence formed by placing an equal sign between two expressions. So, earlier we've been talking about expressions where we don't have an equal sign. We have numbers and variables and operations, but no equal sign. Now we're moving into equations where we do have those equal signs. Solution of an equation is a number you can substitute for the variable to make an equation with one variable true. So a solution would simply be the answer. When you end up with x equals blah blah blah, blah 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 would be your solution. Equivalent equations, equations that have the same solutions. So if you have two different equations and both of them end up with x equals 2, for example, they are equivalent equations. Inverse operation you talked a lot about in 6th grade, and that is an operation that undoes another operation. So let's go ahead and take a look at two of our properties. We have the subtraction property of equality and the addition property of equality. Make sure that you write both of these down. I would include examples as well. Subtracting the same number of each side of an equation produces an equivalent equation. Addition is simply the opposite. Adding the same number from each side of the equation produces an equivalent equation. So for example, if I have x plus 9 equals 12, if I subtract 9 from both sides, I'm going to get x equals 3, and it is an equivalent equation. All I'm doing is removing the 9 from both sides. And then with the addition property, I could add 2 to both sides when I have x minus 2 equals 6, and I'll end up with x equals 8. Again, an equivalent equation. Okay, let's take a look at our teacher example. Go ahead, put your pencils down, and just follow along. Tell whether the value of the variable is a solution of 25 minus g equals 17. So all that we're doing here, we're essentially just doing the check. So you can imagine that someone else solved this problem, and you are being asked to check their work. So they're telling you that g equals 12. That's when they plugged it in, they solved it, they got 12. You need to check and see if that's true. So, of course, we write down the equation, replace our variable with what we think the variable is, and then we're going to subtract this side and see if it comes out equal to 17. So I do 25 minus 12, and I end up with 13, and so we end up with the words for 13 equals 17, which of course is not true. So 12 would not be a solution. Whoever solved that problem did not do it correctly. Now let's try 8. Again, write our original equation, replace our variable with 8, subtract 25 minus 8, and I end up with 17 equals 17. And in this case, your answer would be yes, 8 is a solution. Okay, teacher example 2. Now we need to solve it ourselves, and we're going to practice checking our work. So I do want you to check your work each time. So I have my original equation. Notice I have plus 7. My goal is to have x be the only thing on its side of the equal sign. So whichever side the x is on or the variable is on, it needs to be all by its lonesome self. In this case, we have plus 7, so we need to undo plus 7. So when you think of the opposite of addition, we have subtraction. Now if I do something on this side of the equation, I have to do it on this side as well. So I subtract 7 from each side. And these here are going to cancel out. And we're left with only x on this side because the plus and the minus canceled out. 7, everything's gone here. Okay, now this part here is a little trickier. We've got negative 13 minus 7. As you know, we do not subtract when working with negatives, so you can think of it as negative 13 plus negative 7. Skip, change, change. Now I'm adding two negatives together. My answer is going to be more negative, and I'll end up with negative 20. Now I do want to make sure I'm checking my work, because if I made a little mistake when I was doing skip, change, change, the whole answer will be wrong. So let's go ahead and plug in negative 20 plus 7 equals negative 13. Negative 20 plus 7, I'm adding a negative and a positive. I'm secretly subtracting. And then my negative has a greater absolute value, so I end up with negative 13 equals negative 13, and it does check out. Okay, so I'd like you to go ahead and try these out, solve the equations, and check your solutions. Okay, let's check and see how you did. I have addition here. I'm adding 4. I want the y by itself, so I don't want to do anything with the 13. It's okay because it's on the other side of the equal sign. What I need to get rid of is this plus 4. So of course the opposite of adding 4 is subtracting 4 from both sides. My 4's cancel out, and I'm left with y equals 9. When I check it, I plug 9 in for y. 9 plus 4, of course, is 13, so 13 does equal 13. Problem number 2. Now notice there's no sign in front of the 7. There's a plus sign here with the t, but it stays with the t, so we need to focus on what's in front of the 7. So if there's no sign, that's like a positive sign. So you could put a little plus right here. So the opposite of positive, or plus, is negative. So I subtract 7 on both sides. Okay, those cancel out. I'm left with just the plus t, which of course is simply positive t. Here again, I've got a negative and I'm subtracting, so I skip change. Negative 17 plus negative 7 is going to be more negative, negative 24. Now I can check my work by putting my negative 24 in. I'm adding a negative and a positive here. Of course, I am secretly subtracting, and end up with negative 17 equals negative 17. Okay, let's take a look at teacher example 3. Solving an equation using addition. So now we're doing the opposite. Before we had addition, we had to turn into subtraction. Now we have a subtraction that we want to turn into addition. So I add whatever's with the t. So notice I have this 5 and 8/10. So I'm going to add 5 and 8/10 to both sides. Over here, negative 5/8 and positive 5/8 are opposites. They cancel out. Okay. And here, be careful. A reminder to you, when you're adding with decimals, you need to line up your decimal points. This is where most students make all of their mistakes, and they end up with 74 as their answer, or 7 4/10 as their answer. Remember, the 16 doesn't have a decimal, so we add a decimal point here and a 0. So you can put 0.0 if you need to. Okay, line up those decimal points and add, and you end up with 21 8/10. When I check my work, I replace t with 21 8/10. I subtract 8 minus 8 is 0. 21 minus 5 is 16, and it does check out. Go ahead, student practice 3. Please solve these two. Check your solutions. Do not forget to check. And when you do check, make sure it actually makes sense. If it doesn't, it's an easy way to fix your answer. Okay, let's take a look. We have this subtracting 11 over here. So I'm going to undo it by adding 11 to both sides. I bring down my n, because of course my 11s cancel out. And 14 plus 11 is 25. When I plug 25 into my equation, 25 minus 11 equals 14, I want to actually do that math. Okay, 5 minus 1 is 4, 2 minus 1 is 1. 14 does in fact equal 14. Okay, taking a look here, I have nothing over here with a 2, so leave it alone. Coming over here, I have an s. So anything else that's on this side of the equal sign needs to go. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my minus 3 5/10 by adding 3 5/10 to both sides. Here, they do cancel out. And here again, I need to line up my decimal points. Do not tell me that this is going to end up being 3 3/10 or 3 7/10. Okay, we need to line up those decimal points. I'm adding a positive and a negative, which means I'm secretly subtracting 5 minus 0, because remember this is 2.0. 5 minus 0 is 5. 3 minus 2 is 1. Plugging in my numbers, I'm doing 1 5/10 minus 3 5/10. Of course, I'm going to end up with a negative, so I want to skip change. 5 minus 5 is 0. 3 minus 1 is 2. This one would be negative, so negative 2 equals negative 2. That is correct. Okay, go ahead and take a look at the quiz. Notice you're not going to be typing in the check, but I definitely recommend you check your answers before submitting. Also, make sure you don't write x equals, just write the number. Have a great day.